Sound of a low, sustained hum, gradually fading, replaced by a subtle, rhythmic heartbeat, cold open. Consider the human heart. A powerful, tireless engine. It beats, on average, 100,000 times a day, pushing life through every vein and artery. But what if that extraordinary force, that rhythm of life, became a trap? What if, instead of propelling us forward, it held us captive to the past? Imagine Sarah, a woman in her late 40s. For 2 decades, she clung to a marriage that had withered into a barren landscape of indifference and veiled resentment. Friends, family, even her own children, urged her to leave. They saw the quiet erosion of her spirit, the light dimming in her eyes. Yet, she stayed. Year after year, the thought of divorce, of simply stepping away, felt not like liberation, but like a betrayal. A monumental failure. She was sacrificing her own happiness, her future, for a past that no longer existed. This isn't just about commitment. This is about a deeper, more insidious force. A psychological gravity that pins us to what we know, even when what we know is slowly, inexorably, destroying us. Sound. The heartbeat becomes more prominent, then slowly fades into silence. A single, echoing chime. We all know the feeling. That visceral tug. The relationship that ended years ago, yet still haunts your thoughts. The dead-end job you commute to every morning, despite the crushing weight on your soul. The ambition you abandoned, yet whose ghost still whispers of what might have been. Why do we cling so fiercely to what no longer serves us? Why, when the evidence is overwhelming, when logic screams for release, do we remain shackled to the past? This isn't merely a matter of willpower. It's not a simple choice. Beneath the surface of our conscious decisions lies a complex web of neurobiology, evolutionary imperatives, and deeply ingrained psychological biases. We are governed by forces we barely comprehend. From the ancient wiring of our brains designed for survival, to the subtle ways our identities become fused with our experiences, the act of letting go often feels like tearing a piece of ourselves away. Today, we delve into the hidden science behind this human paradox. We explore the intricate mechanisms that make goodbyes so agonizing, that transform endings into unending loops. We will uncover the powerful cognitive biases that distort our perception of reality, the profound impact of our earliest relationships, and the very chemistry of our brains that can hold us hostage to the familiar, no matter how destructive. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step towards breaking free. It's about recognizing the invisible chains that bind us, chains forged not of steel, but of memory, emotion, and the very structure of our minds. This is the story of why letting go is one of the hardest things a human being will ever do. And why, sometimes, we simply can't. Sound. A low, rumbling drone begins, subtly reinforcing the serious tone. Main content. Our journey into the unyielding grip begins with a concept that often masquerades as rational thought, yet frequently leads us down irrational paths. The sunk cost fallacy, powerfully reinforced by cognitive dissonance. Concept 1. The sunk cost fallacy and cognitive dissonance. Imagine you've bought an expensive, non-refundable ticket to a concert. On the day of the show, you wake up with a terrible flu. You feel miserable. The rational choice, clearly, is to stay home, rest, and recover. But a voice in your head screams, you paid for it. You can't waste that money. So, you drag yourself to the concert, cough through the whole thing, and feel even worse the next day. This is the sunk cost fallacy in action. The sunk cost fallacy, first formally articulated by Arx and Bloomer in 1985, describes our human tendency to continue an endeavor, or to choose a course of action, simply because we have already invested time, money, or effort into it. The resources are sunk, they cannot be recovered. Logically, these past investments should have no bearing on future decisions. Yet, we allow them to dictate our present. This fallacy is amplified by a potent psychological phenomenon, cognitive dissonance. Coined by Leon Festinger in 1957, cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort experienced by a person who holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values, or is involved in an action that conflicts with one of these. When we invest heavily in something, a relationship, a career path, a business venture, and it starts to fail, we experience dissonance. One belief is, "I've put so much into this," and the other is, "This isn't working." To resolve this uncomfortable tension, our minds often engage in mental gymnastics. We rationalize, we distort, we selectively interpret information to justify our continued investment. We might tell ourselves, "It's not that bad," or "It'll get better soon," or "I've come too far to quit now." We are, in effect, trying to protect our past selves from appearing foolish or wasteful. Consider the detailed case of Dr. Evelyn Reed, a brilliant scientist who spent nearly 15 years developing a complex algorithm for a new AI platform. Her initial research showed promise, securing significant grants and accolades. Over time, however, the algorithm proved to be fundamentally flawed, producing inconsistent and often erroneous results. Her colleagues began to suggest pivoting, exploring alternative approaches. Yet, Dr. Reed refused. She poured more hours, more grant money, more intellectual capital into fixing a system that was, by all objective measures, unsalvageable. Each failure was met not with reconsideration, but with renewed, desperate effort. She cited the thousands of hours she had personally invested, the years of her life, dedicated to this specific path. For her, letting go of the algorithm wasn't just abandoning a project. It was abandoning 15 years of her professional identity, admitting that a colossal portion of her career had been spent on a dead end. The cognitive dissonance of accepting that immense sunk cost would have been too overwhelming. She continued, not because the project was viable, but because the cost of admitting defeat felt higher than the cost of continuing. Her story, sadly, is not unique. It is a testament to how deeply our psyche resists the acknowledgement of wasted effort, compelling us to pour good money, or good years, after bad. The pain of letting go is often the pain of confronting our past misjudgments. Sound. Drone fades slightly, replaced by a subtle, melancholic synth note. Concept 2. Attachment theory and trauma bonds. Beyond the calculations of loss and gain, our ability to let go is profoundly shaped by the blueprint of our earliest relationships. Attachment theory, pioneered by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, posits that the bonds we form with our primary caregivers in infancy fundamentally determine our relational patterns throughout life. These early experiences sculpt our internal working models of self and others, influencing how we seek comfort, respond to distress, and ultimately, how we navigate separation. Individuals with secure attachment styles, often raised by consistently responsive caregivers, develop a healthy capacity for both intimacy and independence. They can form deep bonds but also tolerate periods of separation and, crucially, can eventually let go of relationships that no longer serve them, understanding that loss is a part of life and that new, healthy connections are possible. However, many of us develop insecure attachment styles, anxious, avoidant, or disorganized, due to inconsistent, rejecting, or frightening early experiences. These insecure styles lay the groundwork for a profound difficulty in letting go. Anxiously attached individuals, for instance, often fear abandonment intensely. They may cling to unhealthy relationships, interpreting any attempt to distance themselves as a threat to their core survival. For them, letting go feels like re-experiencing the fundamental fear of being alone and unprotected. Avoidantly attached individuals, conversely, may suppress their need for closeness, but paradoxically struggle to disengage from relationships that provide even minimal connection, perhaps because the act of leaving would force them to confront buried emotions they have long avoided. A particularly insidious manifestation of insecure attachment is the phenomenon of trauma bonds. First described by Patrick Carnes in 1981, trauma bonds develop in relationships characterized by cycles of abuse and intermittent reinforcement. This isn't just about physical abuse. It can be emotional, psychological, or financial. The pattern is usually one of intense attachment, followed by betrayal, then a period of reconciliation or remorse, creating a powerful, addictive cycle. The abused individual becomes intensely bonded to the abuser, often developing empathy for them and rationalizing their behavior. The intermittent nature of positive reinforcement, a moment of kindness after a period of cruelty, releases a surge of dopamine and other feel-good neurochemicals, creating a powerful physiological addiction to the relationship. It's like a slot machine. The unpredictable reward makes the player keep pulling the lever, despite repeated losses. Consider the detailed testimony of Maria, a survivor of a psychologically abusive relationship that lasted for 7 years. Her partner, David, would swing wildly between intense adoration and cruel devaluation, often isolating her from friends and family, then showering her with gifts and apologies, promising change. Maria described feeling like she was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to anticipate his moods, believing that if she could just be perfect enough, the good David would emerge permanently. Each time he expressed remorse, each time he promised to change, Maria's hope was rekindled, releasing a powerful cocktail of neurochemicals: dopamine for the reward of potential reconciliation, oxytocin for the renewed feeling of closeness. These moments of intermittent positive reinforcement created an almost unbreakable addiction to the cycle. Letting go wasn't just leaving a person, it was severing a deeply wired neurochemical connection, a pattern that had become her default state of emotional regulation. She recognized, years later in therapy, that the fear of the unknown, combined with the powerful, albeit fleeting, highs of reconciliation, made stepping away feel utterly impossible, even when her life was crumbling around her. Trauma bonds exploit our fundamental need for attachment, weaponizing it against our own well-being. Sound. Synth note fades, replaced by a deep, resonant pulse. Concept 3. Neurochemical rewiring. The addiction to the familiar. Our brains are masters of efficiency. They are constantly seeking patterns, forming habits, and optimizing our responses to the world. And at the heart of this system lies the powerful neurochemical, dopamine. Often misunderstood as simply the pleasure chemical, dopamine is more accurately the motivation chemical, the neurotransmitter that drives us to seek out rewards, to learn, and to form habits. And when it comes to letting go, our dopamine pathways can become a formidable obstacle, effectively making us addicted to the familiar, even when it's detrimental. When we engage in any activity that provides a perceived reward, be it achieving a goal, receiving affection, or even just experiencing predictability, our brain releases dopamine. This creates a positive feedback loop. Dopamine tells us, do that again. Over time, especially with consistent patterns, this loop solidifies into habit. These habits aren't just behavioral, they are neurological. Our neural pathways literally become rewired, making it easier for our brains to follow the path of least resistance, the well-worn groove of the familiar. This neurochemical rewiring extends beyond simple habits to our complex emotional lives. The brain, particularly the limbic system and prefrontal cortex, actively processes predictions and expectations. When we are in a relationship, a job, or a situation, our brain creates a complex internal model of that reality, predicting future interactions, anticipating emotional states. Even if that reality is negative, it is a known reality. The brain, in its drive for predictability and homeostasis, prefers a known negative over an unknown positive. The uncertainty of letting go triggers the brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, flooding the system with stress hormones like cortisol. Conversely, the predictability of the familiar, even if it's painful, offers a certain neurochemical comfort. It allows the brain to conserve energy. It doesn't have to build a new model of the world. Consider the illuminating research by neuroscience teams, which often highlights the role of the mesolimbic dopamine system in reinforcing persistent behaviors. Studies, like those by Barrage and Robinson, 1990s, differentiate between liking, the pleasure of consumption, and wanting, the motivation to seek. In many cases where we can't let go, we may no longer like the situation, but we want it because our dopamine system has conditioned us to pursue it. The very act of engaging in the familiar, even suffering through it, provides a perverse form of dopamine release because it confirms our ingrained patterns. Take the detailed example of Michael, a high-achieving executive trapped in a toxic corporate culture for over a decade. He hated his demanding boss, the ruthless office politics, and the relentless pressure. Yet, he stayed. Every morning, he'd wake up dreading work, but the routine, the known challenges, the predictable albeit negative feedback loop, had become deeply ingrained. His brain had built an elaborate predictive model around this toxic environment. The thought of finding a new job, of facing new colleagues, new expectations, new challenges, the vast unknown, triggered intense anxiety. It wasn't just fear of failure, it was a neurochemical resistance to disruption. His brain had become accustomed to the dopamine hits associated with problem solving within that specific, albeit unhealthy, framework. Stepping out meant a complete neurological reorientation, a period of uncertainty and discomfort akin to withdrawal. His addiction to the familiar was a powerful, unseen force, keeping him tethered to a situation that was slowly eroding his health and happiness, simply because his brain had become efficient at navigating that particular misery. Sound. Deep pulse becomes more erratic, then settles into a low hum again. Concept 4. Identity entanglement and narrative coherence. Perhaps the most profound reason we struggle to let go lies in the intricate relationship between our experiences and our sense of self. Our identities are not static entities. They are dynamic narratives we construct about who we are, where we come from, and where we are going. When a relationship, a career, a project, or even a deeply held belief becomes intertwined with this personal narrative, letting go feels like losing a piece of ourselves. This concept is often referred to as identity fusion or self-extension. The psychologist William James, as early as the late 19th century, posited that our empirical self extends beyond our physical body to include everything we identify with: our family, our possessions, our achievements, our values. When we invest ourselves deeply in something, it ceases to be an external object or relationship and becomes an intrinsic part of our identity. Letting go then becomes an existential threat, a fracturing of the very narrative that gives our lives meaning and coherence. For instance, if you spent 30 years building a career as a teacher, that profession isn't just a job.